Steve, how do you pronounce your last name?
It's Mutria.
Mutria.
Mutria. It's French.
It's French. You're French?
Yes. Well, my history, yes. With my dad's side, yes.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Very nice. So you're sort of a neighbor.
There you go. I like that. Now, where are you located again?
I'm in Greece.
You're in Greece. Perfect. Awesome.
I'm in Greece. Yeah. I lived in England for some years. My husband is English. My son is, as he does, he says, I'm half English, I'm half Greek. He says. So there you go.
That's great.
Yeah. And now we're living here in Greece. We left London a few years ago and we came here.
Interesting. So now you guys follow Torah?
Very recently, I discovered that I should follow Torah. I wasn't reading the Bible, or I was a new-ager, like a full-blown new-ager, like a real new-ager all my life. And the last few years woke me up to what's going on, and I found Torah.
Hallelujah.
I found the Most High. I found our Father. I found our Messiah. And I'm reading now,
awesome.
and I'm studying, and hence I'm talking to you.
Amen. That's awesome.
Yeah. And all right, so you want to introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us about your channel and your website and what you do, a bit of your history.
Sure. Well, like I said, my name is Steve Mutria, and I have now been pursuing Torah for 14 years, and I still consider myself a babe. We all have something to learn and grow in. A common phrase that those who follow my teachings will know I say, we all have something right and we all have something wrong. And it's the best way to pursue it, in my opinion, is to simply say, this is where I stand today. Ask me tomorrow, it might be a little bit different. So it's kind of where I'm at when it comes to following the word. TorahFamily.org is our website, and we have been there now since 2015. My journey started a long time ago. I've been a believer virtually in my life, but coming to Torah just changed everything. And a friend of mine and I, we started at 119 Ministries together. We both started that ministry. And then in 2015, I left there and started the TorahFamily.org. And since then, it's just been an awesome journey. And we now have a home fellowship that we do. Started out as just a home Bible study, and it started by accident, quite honestly. And then it grew and it grew, and now we're renting a local church not too far from us. And yeah, the Father's moving, and I'm thankful. The days that we're living in are extremely interesting, and I believe we need to keep our hearts open to every viewpoint. As I consider the days, they continue to grow darker, it seems. Well, at the same time, you see his hand moving. So it's darker and brighter at the same time. I know that sounds opposing one another. But when you see his hand moving in your life and those around you, how encouraging is that? The world is going to go the way it goes. Our goal is to follow him and do our best to shine his light to the world around us. And that's what I'm doing my best. I pray I'm doing my best every day at doing that. That's kind of me in a nutshell.
When you say you see his hand, moving, working, you mean people waking up to the Torah? That's what you mean, or you something different?
Yeah. When I see people coming to the Torah, coming to the realization that, hey, the church has got something wrong. Yeah, they got a lot of things going right, but there's also some things that we're missing. And then they're hungry for the truth. And then when you see that hunger, that's when you see that nothing's going to stop them, because that hunger is going to drive them to him.
Right. So, as you said, we do live through interesting times. That's a nice way to put it. Interesting. Okay. And that's why I ask you to talk about prophecy, because maybe we're wrong, but it sure does feel that things are close.
Very.
At least that's how it feels.
Amen.
So I think it's a relevant topic to discuss, and you have so many videos out there about prophecy. You do have a sort of unique way to interpret. I haven't heard it before, some of your interpretations, I mean. So how about we try to create some sort of a timeline using Revelation, definitely, and Daniel and the rest of the prophets that do have prophecies, relevant to the end times. And let's try to understand, according to your understanding, of course, where we are now and how will things progress. What's the order of the signs, the way you interpret them? It's a bit different, as I said.
Yeah. A lot of people look at the scriptures, the 1,260 days, the 42 months, times and half a times.
Yes.
We look at that and we make that our slate with how we make everything out to be.
That's 3.5 years, isn't it?
Well, Depends on where you're going from. Yes.
Yeah.
I tell you right now, I do not believe in the 7-year tribulation. I believe the original timeline is 3.5 years, but that's the time that Yeshua says gets cut short. It's in Matthew 24, Luke 21, Mark, where Yeshua says, if those days were not cut short, no one would survive.
Okay. So your understanding is that when Yeshua says that these days will be cut short, he's referring to the 3.5 years, and he's not referring to the fact that after 3.5 years, I'm coming, because if I let that period be longer than 3.5 years, then no one would survive.
Yeah,
Because
I believe
that's also
it's
a valid understanding. I mean, people understand that.
Oh yeah. No, and let me make it clear too that just because I have this current understanding, I'm not saying I'm right, everyone else is wrong. I believe in a lot of ways we're all right. It's just how does all of our right perspectives overlay with one another, and that's what we need to try to work out. But Yeshua says in Matthew 24 again, he says, when you see the abomination that causes desolation spoken by the prophet Daniel, okay, he references that, and then he says at the end of that paragraph, he says, but if those, he says, those days will be cut short. So the days of Daniel are shortened. And then he says, when you see Jerusalem being surrounded, immediately. Okay, wait a second now. He says, when you see Jerusalem surrounded, well, what prophet discusses Jerusalem being surrounded? Only one prophet discusses that. It's Ezekiel chapter 4. Ezekiel 4 says, in fact, he tells Ezekiel to, make this plate and this clay pot and all these different things taking place. It says, surround Jerusalem. For 40 days, they will be surrounded, under siege. This is what Yeshua is referring to. So when we see Jerusalem being surrounded, know that its desolation is at hand. He went from Daniel to Ezekiel just like that. And the funny thing is,
sorry.
Go ahead.
No, conclude your thought. I don't want to interrupt, and then I'll ask you.
Sure. When we read Daniel himself is told the time frame he's been given will be cut short as well. And I'm thinking it's in Daniel chapter 12. Let me look it up real quick. It should be verse 7. I think it's verse 7. 12:7. Here it is. The man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, lifted his right hand and his left hand toward heaven, and I heard him swear by him who lives forever, saying, this is where it's at, it will be for a time, times, and a half a time, when the power of the holy people has been finally broken, all these things will be completed. And this is where everyone goes, well, here it is, Steve, it's a time, times, and a half a time, it's 3.5 years.
Yeah.
But the problem is, this is in the last part of Daniel, and it doesn't say Shana. It doesn't say year, years, and half a year. It says Moed, Moedim, and Shatzi.
Yeah.
For 3.5 Moedim, that's under a year. So this is where my time frames, I have several teachings out. One of them is declaring the end from the beginning, where I show the tribulation will be at the most a year and under a year, most likely. 6 months will be the rule of the Antichrist, is what I think. And always, as odd as that sounds, there's a lot of validity to it. In fact, in the teaching I make, declaring the end from the beginning, I take us back to Leviticus. And in Leviticus, Yahweh says to the people of Israel, that if you remain stiff-necked after I rebuked you, I will multiply your afflictions by 7. He says it like 3 or 4 times. He says that. So meaning, I'm going to give you a minimum punishment here. But if you rebel on that, I'm going to throw the book at you, basically. So if we know he can multiply our afflictions by 7, and Yeshua says in the end, he cuts them short. But what's the maximum he can cut them short to? 1/7. So what's 1/7 of 42 months? 6 months. What's 1/7 of 1,260 days? 180 days. So there's lots of things, and I bring this out in the 1-year tribulation teaching I've got, like I mentioned, declaring the end from the beginning. These are the things I think we aren't looking at. And when he says he's going to cut them short, he says he's going to cut them short. So we have to be honest with ourselves, and how's he going to do that? You had a question you was going to bring up.
Yeah, 3 questions now. Okay, so do you think that, do you believe that in Matthew, Yahusha is referring to 2 events? First, the destruction of the temple, 70 AD, and then the end times, which mirror each other, probably.
Mm-hmm. Here's the thing. When you look at 70 AD, okay, Isaiah 46:10 says, he makes known the end from the beginning, from ancient times what is still to come. So what's that tell us? History is always going to be cyclical. May not always be identical, but it will be cyclical. So when you look at 70 AD, if we try to say this was the fulfillment of prophecy of what was said was going to happen, well, again, Yeshua references Ezekiel chapter 4. He says, Jerusalem's going to be surrounded. Well, then what's Ezekiel say? 40 days it's surrounded, and then it's over. He also says the northern kingdom will be judged at the same time. Well, no one discusses the northern kingdom, what takes place in 70 AD. So what's that tell us? Ezekiel's not being fulfilled.
No.
Is it an element of what we should be seeing coming in the future? Absolutely. But we've seen Jerusalem being destroyed by Babylon just the same. So there's always history showing us what's going to come in the end. Does that make sense there?
Yes, absolutely. My understanding of reading Matthew is that, if I'm correct, he's being asked two questions, not just one. So I think he's responding to both questions. What's going to happen now with the temple? Because he said that, not a single stone will be left from the temple. I think he's answering what's going to happen to the temple and what's going to happen in the end times. So I think Matthew references both events. Because he does say that, truly I tell you that, your generation will see that. And I think that's referring to the destruction of the temple. And then he goes on, what's going to happen at the end times? Because if you try to put, for my understanding, if I try to blend these two events as either referring to just the destruction of the temple or just the end times, then that doesn't make sense to me. I think he's referring to both events. And like you said, things are cyclical. So,
agreed.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. And the second question that I wanted to ask is, do you believe that Yahuwah gives prophecies to his prophets and then he sort of changes his mind? And so he told Daniel three and a half years, the way they all understanding, but then he decided, no, I will cut that short because no one will survive. I mean, how do you think that this
Well, one, we know that Yahweh is not a man that he should change his mind. So he's not going to change his mind. How he gives things to us and to his prophets is for us to decipher out. Even Paul says, we all prophesy in part. Okay, so that means even the prophets, when they were prophesying, they didn't know everything they were given. They were prophesying in part. In fact, for us today, what do we have to do? We go to this prophet, this says this. Well, then we go to this prophet, well, that fills this void in. So all the prophets were prophesying in part. So, and now it's up for us to put the pieces together, if you will. And so even with looking at the long, because I mentioned this in several different teachings, you hear prophecy teachings, everyone talks about, like I said, the 1,260, times and half a time. Well, why isn't anyone addressing the 1,290 mentioned by Daniel? Why isn't anyone ever talking about the 1,335 mentioned by Daniel? No one addresses these verses. I've addressed them in several different ones. It's showing how things will play out. In fact, anyone who follows my teachings will tell you that Steve doesn't set dates, he watches them every year. There are certain biblical dates and biblical seasons I watch every year. Now, right now with what I see going on, I'm watching all the more intensely these certain times that I watch. And it was just this about 2 weeks ago, my friend and I, who I talk prophesy with a lot, he lives in Canada. We talk almost every week. And we were tying some pieces together that were lining up this year that was almost disturbing perfect. And I can tell you right now, the next few weeks, as of this day of this recording, we're recording what is today's date, February 9th. The next week and a half is on my radar, big time.
Why?
Because I'm watching Purim. And what leads up to Purim? Yeshua just mentioned, I've talked about, he referenced Ezekiel 4. Well, Ezekiel 4 says Jerusalem will be surrounded for 40 days. That's the time of the siege. And then immediately after that siege, this destruction is at hand. It's going to be overcome. So there's 40 days. When you go to Purim, it's all about their destruction, but the destruction was what? Turned around. Well, we know Zechariah, Ezekiel, many prophets talk about how it's not going to be turned around this time. They will be overcome, almost to the point of utter destruction, but then Yahweh turns it to where they're not fully destroyed. And so there's a 40-day time frame. Well, let's just assume for a moment Purim is that time when that destruction comes. Go back 40 days to the day of start of Purim. It lands exactly on Ash Wednesday this year, which happens to be Valentine's Day, and the beginning of Lent, which is a 40-day time frame. And there's so many things that can start right at this time frame. Now, for me, if this is legit, if that's the time frame that's going to be happening, there has to be a massive event take place for me. And that would be the revealing of the Ark of the Covenant and the tent of meeting. So if that doesn't come out, I'm going to say, well, then I'm going to keep watching. Trust me, there's multiple dates I watch every year, but this is one that I'm watching. And I believe very strongly, I mean, it's going to take a whole lot to convince me that the Ark of the Covenant is not the image of the beast. This is what we're going to, and I have a teaching specifically on that. Yes. And when we read about, it says the image of the beast spoke. Well, what did the Ark of the Covenant do? Yahweh's voice spoke from between the two cherubim to Moses multiple different times. And I have a teaching on it simply titled The Image of the Beast for those who are interested in it. And but that has to happen first for me. Once that happens, you can almost start the clock. Things are about to get ready.
You think it's going to be the legitimate ark?
Yes, I do. Yeah. Okay. In fact, if you go to 2 Maccabees, it's where Jeremiah references that it will be hidden until the time for Yahweh to bring his people back together. So even if now you don't have to trust Maccabees, I get it, but it is a historical book to me, and that alone shows that it will be the one that comes out.
Did you say that you don't believe in tribulation?
Oh no, I believe in tribulation. I just don't believe it's going to be a 7-year time frame.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's going to
tribulation is
be
going to be.
half a year. How long do you think it's going to be?
I have multiple teachings on this. I have different perspectives on it, and the one that I lean to the most at this time is that the tribulation itself, as far as persecution for being a believer, that I call it would be the tribulation. Hard times are going to be around, but as far as the tribulation is when you are persecuted because you believe in Yeshua, okay, and hold to his commandments. That comes under the hand of the Antichrist. And if his rule is what I believe, 6 months, it'll be just after he begins ruling. In fact, I believe that time frame starts right around second Passover.
Why second?
History. Excuse me. Second Kings and Chronicles discusses, I think I've got it somewhere here. Forgive me as I'm looking it up. Second Chronicles 3. It says that King Solomon started building the temple on the second day of the second month. Okay. And that would mean the Antichrist, if he's represented by Solomon, as I think he is in many different ways, that he will begin that stone temple being made right at that same time frame. At that same time, that will be when he begins to pursue those who are following Torah and aren't supposed to be following Torah. That being, if I have a teaching simply titled Beware of the Noahide Laws. A lot of people look to about the Antichrist going to be Islamic, or the Antichrist is going to be from the European Union, or whatever. My current understanding is that the Antichrist is going to be represented by a Jew, and he will be the one who leads the Jews, because the Jews are not going to accept an Islamic Messiah.
No.
The Jews are not going to accept anyone else.
Anyone else other than a Jew. Yeah.
Correct. And it will be that through the Noahide laws that they will prohibit any Gentile from pursuing Yeshua in the Torah. And again, it's all in the teaching simply titled the Noahide laws that I have.
I've watched it, yeah. All right. Okay. So do you believe that now we're during the birth pains?
To me, the birth pains are actually begin with the resurrection. And I simply have a teaching simply titled, I have a teaching titled The Birth Pains. It's in Isaiah 66. It says, before she goes into labor, she gives birth. So what's that tell us? The resurrection happens before the birth pains themselves. And Isaiah 26 also talks about, the resurrection taking place. The earth will give birth to her dead. That's around verse 20 of Isaiah 26. But Isaiah 66, when he says, around verse 7, and he says that before she goes into labor, she gives birth. And then like a few verses later, he goes, who's heard of such a thing, to give birth before she goes into labor? It doesn't make sense. So in that teaching, simply titled Birth Pains, I show how we're watching and seeing things, but the birth pains happen when the resurrection happens. When the resurrection takes place, all hell breaks loose on the earth like never before. And we'll see things, but when that happens, it's going to be tribulation beyond tribulation, because my current understanding is that the resurrection itself will take place on the day of Shavuot. I have multiple teachings on Shavuot. In fact, if you look at what happens on the day of Shavuot, you have a massive horn blowing, getting louder and longer, the dark clouds, the fire on the mountain. It's a perfect representation of what we see in 2 Thessalonians, or 1 Thessalonians 4, when Paul says, he's coming in the clouds with a great trumpet. It's all identical to what we see on Shavuot with the day of the covenant being made. And what are we waiting for? We're waiting for the marriage supper of the Lamb, the new covenant. It's all represented at the first covenant at Mount Sinai, that being Shavuot.
Okay. Before we go there, so you don't think that there will be any signs before the Antichrist for us, before the siege of Jerusalem, for us to understand that, hey, we're approaching the time?
Well, again, I think that there's going to, because if you look at the parable of the 10 virgins, something wakes them up. Says, hey, here comes the bridegroom. Come out to meet him. So to me, and again, lots of views, and I respect them all. I'm not saying I'm right here, but my current understanding is it will be that when the Ark of the Covenant comes out, that will be the wake-up call. That's going to be like everyone's going to go, oh my goodness. In fact, I was speaking to an archaeologist friend of mine, and they were saying how, and a certain thing came out. I forgot what idol it was, but an idol was unveiled and was dug up. And they told me, that Steve, within weeks after that, that idol represented a lifestyle that was very opposing to Yahweh. And it was a god that was represented by male and female together. And it was after that, that was when this male-female gender blending started attacking the world. That spirit started coming across the world like crazy. She said, so it's like when this thing came out, you could just see the world change because of it. And likewise, I believe when the Ark of the Covenant comes out, the atmosphere around the world is going to change. They're going to go, oh my goodness, this is world breaking here. What's going to happen? So I believe without every fiber of my being right now, anyway, is that when the Ark of the Covenant comes out, that's going to be the telltale sign. It's all going down.
And how do you think that things will go down?
Well, like I said, it will begin with Jerusalem being surrounded. If I'm right here, and again, please know this is like where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
Someone says something to me tomorrow. Okay. When the Ark comes out, it will charge the modern day Jews, the modern Israel today.
Yes.
And I believe that it will give them a week, and they'll do everything they can to take over the Temple Mount. The second they take the Temple Mount, it's like, yeah, they've already got the current mindset of the world is against the Jews today because of what's been taking place in Gaza. Now, I'm opposed to war. So, but what we're seeing is because when everything started happening, everyone was behind Israel. Yes, they need to do something. But then all of a sudden, it seemed like Israel took it too far. And now all of a sudden, the world is changing against them. But when they take that Temple Mount, it will lock and seal the world against them because they're going to take the Temple Mount and destroy the Dome of the Rock. When that takes place, in fact, I mentioned most of this in the teaching. What is what is it? I'm not teaching. I forgot now. What is the idol of jealousy? And
the idol of jealousy.
The idol of jealousy spoken by Ezekiel. And it's the Ark of the Covenant. And it talks about how it's set up by the North Gate. Well, if you look at the modern Temple Mount right now, the whole north section of the whole Temple Mount is the biggest open area that they've got. And it's right in front of the North Gate. And so what are they going to do? They'll set the tent of meeting up with the Ark of the Covenant there, and then they'll plow over the Dome of the Rock. And then second day, second month, they start building that temple. So, but they still will be charging, they'll take over that Temple Mount. That's what I see is happening. And
you think the Muslims are going to let them even a week?
No,
if they
no, they will not let them. That's why they're going to be surrounded. And they'll give them 40 days, just as I mentioned by Ezekiel. At the end of the 40 days, that will be Palm Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. That's when Jerusalem is going to be taken over. And it will be a bad time. And Yeshua says it'll be the worst of all times. But it won't just be happening there. I think at that moment in time, that's when America will be getting severe punishment just the same. We'll start feeling it just as much.
To whom?
To America. I think America as a whole represents the Northern Kingdom. Now, represents, not is the Northern Kingdom. There's a big difference.
I'm sorry, can you say that again because I was confused? Tell me again what America will do.
America will be, think of it this way. Let's go back to Ezekiel 4. Ezekiel 4, we see where Jerusalem is surrounded for 40 days. And then it mentions how the Northern Kingdom will also have a time of suffering after those 40 days. So the judgment begins at the end of those 40 days for Jerusalem and for the Northern Kingdom. It says the house of Israel. Okay. Now, if something happens within the next week and a half or so, where we start seeing Jerusalem being surrounded, whenever you see that happening, you can start counting 40 days. And that's when it's going to happen. Now, will it happen when I'm seeing it? Maybe not. All I'm saying is whenever we see Jerusalem being surrounded, and I think it will be because the Ark of the Covenant comes out, and they're going to want the Temple Mount. When that happens, start counting your 40 days. And at the end of those 40 days, Jerusalem will be ransacked. You can go to Zechariah 12 through 14. You can go through Ezekiel verses chapters 7, 8, 9. You'll see where their destruction takes place. That's when it happens. When that's taking place, America is going to be getting taken out just the same. Now, will they be nuked? I don't think nuke will be at that time. Go ahead.
Taken out by whom?
By whom? Oh,
yeah.
Do you realize how many enemies the Americans have?
Yes, but by whom? I mean, it's
at this point, it doesn't matter whom. The judgment will come by whoever the Father makes it happen. I can see it come by multiple nations. It won't be just
Why
one.
just America, Steve? I mean, the EU is equally horrible.
Absolutely. No, I think my current understanding is America hosts the UN. It's really the UN, as my opinion right now would be what we would call Babylon. But America hosts Babylon. And America has a very strong hand in what the UN does. Now, they've been voted against, and I get it. But we all know that America has a big say in what the UN does. And wrong or right, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that's what it appears is happening. But when you take that UN out, I think that it's very plausible to see New York being taken out, DC, parts of the West Coast as well. That will be what pretty much cripples the US. It won't take them out, but it'll cripple them. I think at the same time, America will be completely wiped out. In fact, I think that will take place on the day of the resurrection. And Revelation 18:19 discusses how Babylon is at that time is taken up for good, and it's taken at the time of the resurrection.
So you localize it. You don't think that it
Yes.
will be a around the world phenomenon, but the whole earth will be
Well,
going through.
let's make it clear too that, Britain, all your European nations, they'll be affected. Okay, they're going to be affected. But I was talking with a friend of mine just the other day. It's like Babylon is riding the beast. According to Revelation 17, the woman is riding the beast. But then it says the beast rises up against Babylon. So Babylon is controlling the beast now. The beast gets out of control, destroys the woman who's riding her, and then goes and sets up the beast system in Jerusalem. The beast system is going to be from Jerusalem itself. That's why you see, in fact, Revelation 13 talks about the 10 horns and the 2 horns of the first beast and the second beast. When we look at the history of Israel, what do we have? The 10 northern tribes and the 2 southern tribes. The 10 horns, the 2 horns. I discuss this in my teaching, the northern kingdom, the king of the north. Forgive me, it's called the king of the north. And it's all about, we can't forget, the Bible is all about Israel, not modern day Israel, Yahweh's Israel. So when we keep that centrally located in our mind, we have to realize that those 10 horns are representative by the 10 northern tribes, forgive me. And the 2 horns are the southern tribes. So we have to do a whole modern, get rid of our mentalities of what we've been brought up with. Not saying they're wrong, but set them to the side and to say, what does this represent in Yahweh's eyes for his people? And it changes our whole perspective. In fact, it's in Revelation chapter 11, if I'm not mistaken, where it talks about how the outer courts are given to who? The Gentiles, the 10 northern kingdom, the 10 northern tribes. And I discussed this in one of my teachings, but forgive me, I forgot which one that is. But there's so much we have to keep in mind that it's always going to be about Yahweh's people and judgment on them. When it comes back to pulling the Antichrist kingdom is going to be set up. And think of it this way. Paul references in 2 Thessalonians that the Antichrist himself will set himself up in God's temple, claiming to be God. Well, then where's the Antichrist going to be? In Jerusalem. So he will have his kingdom set up in Jerusalem. In fact, if you look at the same element, I think it's in chapter 11 as well. It says when the 7th trumpet was blown, it says that the kingdom of the world has now become the kingdom of our Lord and Savior. So we know Yeshua has his kingdom set up where? In Jerusalem. So what does that mean? The kingdom of the world was set up where? In Jerusalem. That's where the Antichrist will be ruling. But Yeshua takes it, turns it over, and says, "This is my kingdom now." Change of staff, change of government. Everything's changed now. This is my government. Does that make sense?
Yes. So, okay, after the siege of Jerusalem, Jerusalem is going to be overtaken, and then you believe that at the same time something is going to happen to the U.S. or maybe Europe or to the northern tribes anyway.
Correct.
The 10 tribes, the lost tribes.
Yes.
Okay, and then the Antichrist will appear to save Jerusalem.
Correct. I have a teaching simply titled The Assyrian.
Yes.
As we know, did you watch that one?
I just watched it before we started this.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
This is why I also see the sacrificial system will get set up and going during those 40 days. Because then everyone's looking for the Antichrist to come and do what? To bring the sacrifices to an end. That's what everyone's been told. So when the Assyrian comes in and brings these to an end, they're going to identify him as what? The Antichrist. That's the bad guy. Then they pretty much devastate Jerusalem. But then Yahweh allows the true Antichrist to rise up and defeat this guy. And this is where you're going to have the deception come in. Because now all of a sudden, this guy rises up as a savior and defeats what everyone is identified as the Antichrist, thus making this guy the Messiah. Not realizing that he's the true Antichrist. It's all, in my opinion, where I'm at right now. The enemy has done a great job of infiltrating the church over the last millennia and getting us to believe this, getting us to believe that, all setting up for us to actually receive the false Messiah in the end, because we've misidentified who he is. And this is a concern of mine. And I, as you saw, I did my best to address that in the Assyrian teaching.
Do you think the Assyrian will be Iran?
I lean that way. I'm open. It's hard to say. Ask me today, I'll say yes. This one, ask me tomorrow. Well, I battle back and forth with myself on many different things. Forgive me. And so I just don't know. I I do my best to stay open. And if anybody ever challenges me, I go, oh man, I got to think about this. And I'll put it to prayer. And if I don't see it right now, I still don't put it aside. I'll put it on the shelf and say, keep that one in mind because I could be wrong.
And we'll revisit it. Yeah, I also do that. Okay. And Steve, why do you think that this is eminent with the Ark of the Covenant, and that this will happen this year? Maybe so eminent.
I can't say. I have some inside. Well, I know. No, it's not a hunch. I have some inside ties with some people, and all I can tell you is right now, things are heating up in the archaeological world right now regarding the Ark of the Covenant. And I'm not at liberty to say what and how.
Okay, don't say. But what your understanding is that they're getting close to discover it.
Yeah. Well, it depends on who you follow. A lot of people will follow Ron Wyatt, and it's under the. It's over here. It's in Jerusalem. Some people will say, well, it's under the Temple Mount, and then it's all over. All I can tell you is right now, if you ever go to the copperscrollproject.com.
Sorry, I have to write that down.
Yeah, it's called the copperscrollproject.com. Again, the Copper Scroll Project.
The copper, like the metal copper.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And you can, Jim Barfield is the team lead on that. I used to be on Jim's team. And all I can tell you is.
How do you spell the last name of Jim?
Jim Barfield, Barfield. That is how it's spelled. Yeah.
And you used to be in his team? I
did. And we've been over there with Jim at Qumran. This is where it's believed it's been found. It's not been found. It's not been lifted out. But there's tons of evidence to show that this is where it's at. And when I started researching on my own, looking at Ron Wyatt's evidence, let me know Ron did a ton of great stuff. But when it came to the Ark of the Covenant,
I sort of disagree with some of his understandings.
Yeah, and I'm not saying he's wrong on everything. Lots of great stuff. But when it came to the Ark of the Covenant, I started seeing lots of different contradictions as the story kept growing and unfolding. And I didn't even, I'm going, wait a minute, he said this over here, and now it's changed here. And I struggled with that. And then thankfully the Lord showed me Jim Barfield, and actually Jim came to us years ago, and we started reaching out to each other, and it was just a great camaraderie, started growing in our relationship. And but yeah, again, the Copper Scroll Project has got a lot of evidence I think a lot of people aren't looking at. But back to your question, why do I think the eminence right now? Let's face facts. Things are happening in Israel right now, in the Middle East right now. We're seeing tensions that we haven't seen in years. I mean, I'm talking World War II type thing. And it's growing. It's not, I keep waiting for it to like just settle down a little bit. It's going to slow down, Steve. It's going to slow down. And it doesn't. It keeps, if it's not escalating, it's just still simmering. And every once in a while, the simmer just boils up a little bit more, a little bit more. And right now, this is, to me, the wars and rumors of wars that Yeshua said, don't worry about it. It's supposed to be here. The end is yet to come. But we've been seeing these wars and rumors of wars escalating over the last 2 years now, since Russia invaded over at Ukraine. Whether they're wrong or right is irrelevant to me. The whole point is it's been escalating ever since that time frame, and it's not slowing down. So for me,
but someone is pushing for these wars, Steve.
Absolutely. Well, but do we not think it cannot be at the hand of the Father allowing it to happen up to this point? Maybe they've been pushing for it for a long time, and Yahweh's saying, no, it's not time yet. And now Yahweh's stepping back and allowing it to happen. We got to remember, yes, there's lots of it's always going to be man doing things, but Yahweh allows man to do things.
What about I've also heard someone's opinion on this subject, telling me that whoever is in power behind the scenes, you understand, because they know the timings of the prophecy, they're trying to bring the fulfillment of prophecy before it's time. So this way they believe that maybe they can manipulate it or deceive. So they're pushing for wars and stuff like that. So they have us believe that it's times when it's not. They're just trying to fulfill their own, bring prophecy closer. So we're deceived. I've also heard that.
I'm not going to say that's wrong. When we consider all the perspectives, yeah, I can say it's a possibility. If that's the case, it's still being allowed by Yahweh. I don't know why that would be the case. I know a lot of people are looking to 2030 and different things like that. And it's an option I look at. My perspective, there's the video done on that, the 2030 thing for when Yeshua is coming. I did a rebuttal on that, not necessarily a rebuttal, but just a response to it saying, I believe everything he's saying. I'm just not 100% solid on the timing. I show how other timings could be used with that exact same mentality. So right now, I think we all would agree there's something in the air. There's something that's making us all go, it's starting sometime soon. Now, how will it unfold? That's what we have to be open and praying. But my prayer is that we're all having our eyes opened and ready when it does start. Because if it starts, where are we at? We've got to be prepared mentally, spiritually, physically, every way possible. If we're not, we're only hurting ourselves.
Yeah. I'll take you there. How we can prepare. But first, I want to still understand the timeline. Okay, so I let you when the Antichrist comes and saves Israel and Jerusalem, and then he reigns. So for how long he will be reigning, and what's going to happen during his reign?
If I'm correct, it will be sometime around a Passover that he brings victory to Israel, either just before it and they celebrate Passover, or it will actually, he starts rising to power just before Passover, and then that's when they win at Passover, sometime around there. If that's the case, I believe he would start ruling as their leader. I don't know if they would say call him king, if they're calling new president, whatever, prime minister. I don't know what they're calling.
Yeah.
But he will start leading probably around the 10th day of the first month, and then his rule will come to an end either on the Day of Atonement 6 months later, okay, or it's going to be right around Sukkot time frame. That's where I'm watching. So, but again, it's going to be somewhere. His rule will be 6 months. So that's where I'm at right now.
And you think that's a sufficient, time frame for all the horrible things that will happen to the saints, to the believers? And
yes, you have no idea how bad it's going to be. None of it. When Yeshua says it will be the worst enemy of all time and yet to be, he meant it. I'm telling you the truth with all my heart. It will be a time of utter devastation.
I believe that. We're discussing about the how long this will last. I do believe it's going to be very bad. That happens. Okay. So your understanding is one feast period. I mean, the 7 feasts. That's your time frame.
And it falls to 1/7. It's going back to Torah. It's 1/7 of what was given. He threw the book at the beginning, but now he's going to, through his grace and his mercy, he cuts it short to 1/7. The exact opposite of what he says would happen if we rebel, when he only gives us 1/7 and multiplied by 7.
That's your understanding, or you read it somewhere?
Well, it's Leviticus. Leviticus discusses it, how he would multiply our afflictions by 7 if we remain stiff-necked. And so the whole point is, in Revelation, and not Revelation, but just in the prophets, what we read, he's throwing the book at us. It's the maximum punishment. But through his grace and his mercy, he cuts it to 1/7. And here's another thing I think a lot of people kind of forget. I think that when he says he cuts it short, it's not cut short by way of it starts and then it's cut short at the end. Like it starts when it's supposed to start and then it cuts it short. It's cut short by the element of it's delayed in starting, and only the last 1/7 is what we experience. In fact, this is given to us in Revelation chapter 10, when it says that there will be no more delay, showing us it's been delayed and delayed and delayed, and suddenly there's no more delay.
I understand what you mean. Yeah. So he's cutting it short because he's delaying it.
Correct.
All right.
And this is why when you see the enemy falls from heaven, he knows his time is short, and he's filled with fury and indignation because he knows his time is short. He didn't get to start when he wanted. He's only got this little bit of time left now, and he goes out with fury.
Okay. Yeah. What's your position about? I'm sure you've heard about that Babylon and it is the Vatican and the Catholic Church, and their harlot and everything.
Yeah.
And the second part on the same question. And what about the one world government? It will affect the whole world. Under the Vatican, under the Pope, under somebody else, people believe it's going to be the Pope.
Yeah. Well, I do believe in a one world government that will be coming under the Antichrist, and being ruled from Jerusalem. That's my current view, my current thoughts and understanding. I see where many are coming from with the Pope and the world religious system. I get it, but I struggle with it at the same time. So I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's not going to play a role. I can easily see it playing a role. However, the role I think it will be playing will be that of leading those who will be following under the Noahide laws. So the Antichrist will set them up. You lead these people over here under the Noahide laws, and then the Jews will be doing this thing over here from Jerusalem. We will be following Torah. You can follow the Noahide laws over here. So I can see the Catholic Church playing a role in that, but I don't see them being the Antichrist or the false prophet system per se. That's my current, again, the 10 northern king, the 10 horns, the 2 horns, it's all dealing with specifically that of Israel itself. And it's the Antichrist. it's when we go to the prophets, Zechariah talks about, I think it's Zechariah, forgive me, Ezekiel maybe, or the two sticks being put back together.
Yeah.
That's what the Antichrist is trying to do. He's mimicking what Yeshua will be doing. He's doing it under the one world system. He's putting all Israel back together, the 10 horns and the two horns back together. Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel, putting them together here. And then you've got Yeshua going to be doing the same thing at the resurrection. In fact, if you go to looking at the element of what David did, and then you have Saul. Saul is here in the city. He's ruling Israel, but he's not the anointed. He's ruling as king, but he's not anointed. And here you have David, who is anointed, who's where? Out in the wilderness. It's a prime picture. Yeah, it's a prime picture of Yeshua with his bride out in the wilderness, who is anointed to be king. And you got the Antichrist in the city ruling as king. And then the time will come when Yahweh says, okay, time's up. And then Yeshua goes into Israel and conquers. And then that's when Yeshua cleans house. And I cover that in my teaching, simply titled it's the
Satan Masquerade.
That's it. Satan's greatest masquerade. That's it. Yep.
See, I've done my research.
you know more about my teachings than me.
I just proved it.
Well, a lot of times I got to go back to my teachings to find out what I believe too.
There are too many. Okay. All right. I see what you mean with the Pope and everything. Okay. The 6 months pass. It's going to be very, very bad for the believers. And then
Battle of Armageddon. In fact, if you want to know how history is cyclical, Yahweh makes known the end from the beginning. You go to Joshua chapter 10. You will see the Battle of Armageddon in Joshua chapter 10. You see hailstones coming down, killing most of the enemy, and Joshua's leading the army. And so it's like it's revelation right there in Joshua. And so here you have Yeshua, who is Joshua.
I'm confused with the Battle of Armageddon. Sorry to interrupt.
No worries.
Does it happens after the resurrection? The Battle of Armageddon.
My understanding, there's lots of different opinions out there, of course, but my understanding is it's after the resurrection.
Okay, so the resurrection has to happen first.
Correct.
When does that happen?
My current understanding is it takes place on Shavuot.
So after the reign of the Antichrist?
During the reign of the Antichrist.
During the reign of the Antichrist.
The reign of the Antichrist will be starting, like I said, anywhere between first Passover to second Passover, somewhere in that time frame. And then right there, just after second Passover, you're going to have, we're talking just a week, 2 weeks, something like that. You have the Shavuot taking place. And again, I know it sounds odd, it sounds weird, but if you look at the parallels.
Because if the resurrection happens, then everybody knows. Whoever is pretending to be, Yahusha is not, because the resurrection hasn't happened. And then suddenly your dead father is here.
No, let's think about this for a second, though. Look at what would take place at the resurrection. We know if you read in context and you continue with the flow of the context from Isaiah 24 through Isaiah 26, it's all the same context. Global devastation, a world earthquake taking place in Isaiah 24. And it stays in the same context. And you go to this a chapter and a half later in chapter 26, it says the earth will give birth to her dead. Let's pause for a moment now. Go to the resurrection of Yeshua, a very localized resurrection. Right there, one little cave, right there. What happened? A great earthquake. It says a great earthquake took place and it scared everyone there. The guys took off like talking to the Romans.
Yeah. Regards.
Now think about a resurrection taking place globally. You're looking at a global earthquake that will devastate the world.
So you're connecting that.
Who's going to miss a few 100,000 believers in the midst of utter millions and millions of people dead because of this earthquake? No one's going to miss it because they're all focused on what's going on. And again, I covered that in the teaching, the birth pains. I covered that in several different teachings. So no, and bear in mind too, I don't believe the element of aliens has been playing mainstream news for nothing here lately. I have a teaching that discusses aliens and biblical prophecy. And where I'm at right now, this may sound odd. Well, all my teachings sound odd to a lot of people I know, but I really believe the New Jerusalem, a lot of people believe it's a perfect cube. I believe it's a perfect pyramid. Same width, same depth, same height, and Yeshua as the capstone. And people always will say that's the Illuminati, all this stuff. The enemy has always wanted to be like the Most High. He always mimics. He can't create his own. He's always mimicking that. Yeah. And so when you see pyramids all over, it's all about the enemy mocking Yahweh, the Most High. Look, they're worshiping me with your elements. So when Yeshua comes, and he will come, and Revelation says every eye will see him. Example, let's just say my family and I are going to go over to your house and meet you and your husband one day. And your husband looks out the window, goes, oh, look, I see their car coming. Here they come. Now, did they see me? No, they saw our van coming. But you saw us coming. Everyone's going to see him coming. When? In the New Jerusalem, when it comes down. Every eye will see the new, but what's the world going to say? That's aliens. That's the enemy. And goes right into what Isaiah says. What are those who call evil good and good evil? The ultimate good of what you're looking at, people are going to call it the enemy. There has been movies after movies after movies about this.
Yeah. Okay. I've also heard the explanation that the aliens are for the fallen angels, that they will come back.
Yeah, that can go into.
They want to present them to us as our progenitors, our gods.
Very possible. I think it can go in line though with Revelation 9, where it says the enemy, it says the angel Apollyon, which is Satan himself, opens the abyss and they come out. If I'm correct, I think that they will actually play a role in attacking the world. So when they see the ark of the New Jerusalem, this happens, and they're going to associate this evil with the New Jerusalem. And in fact, if you go to Jude, where it says that they're in chains right now for the day of judgment, people think if the day of judgment is for the time of judgment on them. No, they're being reserved for judgment on the world. They'll be released to bring judgment on the world. That's in Jude.
Okay, so I'm still confused with the resurrection happening in the middle of the Antichrist reign. Okay, now the saints have been resurrected, and where do they go?
To the New Jerusalem.
Immediately after they're resurrected.
They'll meet Yeshua in the clouds. Okay, and that'll be in the skies, the New Jerusalem. My current understanding is that that's when they go to Mount Sinai.
The resurrected will be. That's the not the tribulation. How you call it? How you call this? He's gonna catch us in the cloud.
The resurrection?
No.
Sorry.
He will come to me. This event when he will save us. He will save the elect. He will come to save us, and he'll catch us in the clouds.
Mm-hmm.
The resurrected and the living. That's how people perceive it, and they call this event.
Oh, some call it the rapture.
The rapture, yeah.
Okay, it's us. I tried to stick to biblical terms more than anything. That's why I call it the resurrection.
Okay, so the rapture happens during the Antichrist reign.
Correct.
But
and that's why you see in Revelation 13. Revelation 13, it says he curses up in the throne room in the second. That's because he knows. It's very possible. Everybody's going to see it. And so I have lots of questions myself, but when I look at how biblical history and biblical timing has to take place, this is the format that I'm seeing.
Then if the saints have been raptured, let's call it that, then who's left to torture, and persecute and kill?
Well, there'll be lots of people who are left behind.
Yes, but I understand that the Antichrist basically wants the believers. He doesn't care about the unbelievers. The unbelievers will believe him. Why would he?
Okay, I'm following
go after
you.
them. Yeah,
I'm following you. Well, this is where I'm going to say that it's only the Church of Philadelphia who is actually resurrected. Okay, there's a reason why Yeshua even gives the parable of the 10 virgins. You have 5 wise, 5 foolish. Only 5 make it. Okay, what happens to the other 5? They suffer the time of persecution under the Antichrist. So there's going to be many believers. In fact, if you look at all 7 churches in Revelation, a lot of people forget that these people knew Torah. Okay, and yet even at that time, Yeshua only says to one, "I will keep you from the hour of trial." In fact, I even have a teaching simply titled "The Hour of Trial," and discusses how this is the hour of trial is the time under the Antichrist himself. And so there's going to be a time of persecution leading up to it. Don't get me wrong; it's going to be hard times. But then that's where it's up to the 5 wise to go out and leave Babylon and to escape. Yeshua said, Luke 21:36, "Pray you're able to escape all these things and stand before the Son of Man." Stand before the Son of Man is marriage language. To stand before him for the marriage. Okay, but he says to escape all of it. So there will be some who will escape all of it. And this is going into your Revelation chapter 12, where it says how they flee out and the dragon goes out to pursue them. And then he fails. And then what's he do? It goes right into chapter 13. And then comes the Antichrist. So there's going to be a time where the enemy pursues. And then the Antichrist the enemy brings in the Antichrist after that. So, and this is where you're going to have
be persecution before the Antichrist.
Correct.
But in your timeline, we don't have time for the persecution.
Oh, there'll be plenty of time for the persecution. Trust me. He doesn't need years to kill off millions of people. He doesn't need those years. All he needs is a little bit of time. We've got to get our mindset out of it has to be 7 years or it has to be 3.5 years. When Yeshua says it's cut short, it will be cut short.
I really want to believe you because that's the optimistic scenario.
I hear you.
hell will not be breaking loose for years and years and years and years.
Right, right.
Okay, but I'm just trying to understand because I haven't heard of this
No, I get it.
interpretation again. But I'm
Well,
open.
remember
I'm
too,
also open. Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm with you. And remember, there will be people who survive under the Antichrist rule, because that's what Yeshua says. So if I don't cut it short, no one will survive. Thus, there will be survivors. I have a teaching simply titled The Second Exodus. I think it's very vital for people to watch. And there is the second Exodus that takes place of these believers, and they journey back to Israel for the feast of Passover. But it'll be second Passover. Yeshua, when he was with his disciples and said, I will not partake of this bread or the wine until in the kingdom. That will take place, not at first Passover, but at second Passover. In fact, if we go to Ezekiel chapter 38, 39, everyone talks about this, the big battle. To me, this is the battle of Armageddon. And it says they're cleaning the dead bodies for how long? 7 months.
7 months.
They're cleaning dead bodies. Right. So what's that mean? If the battle of Armageddon takes place anywhere between what I think, Day of Atonement to Sukkot, you go 7 months, what's it going to take you to? Second Passover. Because they're cleaning dead bodies. So it means they're cleaning dead bodies during first Passover. They're unclean. They can't partake. And then those who are on the journey are traveling back. And if you go to Numbers chapter 9, that's the very two reasons why Yahweh gave second Passover. So if you're touching a dead body or you're on a long journey, that's the very reason why Yahweh gave second Passover. So the very reason he gives it to us points to the end days. Those who are in the land, they're cleaning the dead bodies. They're unclean for first Passover. Those who are out, the survivors who are making their way back to Jerusalem, well, they're traveling. So they won't be there for first Passover, but everyone will be there and ready for second Passover with Yeshua at second Passover.
Okay, I understand that. That makes sense. And what about the wrath of God? That the saints will be saved from the wrath, but the unbelievers will be destroyed, sort of.
Well, that's Armageddon.
That's Armageddon.
Yeah, I mean, we're not called to be in wrath. Okay. But
my understanding was, fire raining from the sky and earthquakes and floods and total destruction.
Yes, agreed. But remember, that's to the faithful. So yes, that's why I'm saying the resurrection is going to take place at Shavuot, and then the rest, you're going to have to go through a time of refinement. Here's the thing: I did a teaching about the refinement for believers. If we don't choose to refine ourselves now, He will refine us then. It's up to us. So if we don't go through the refinement of purifying ourselves to be ready for that day of the wedding, then we will miss that time. We'll be a then of the five foolish, and then we'll have to go through the purification of hard times through the tribulation time.
And what about the woman who gives birth and her child is protected?
To me, that's if you go to, I think it's in, give me a second, Galatians, forget what chapter it is, forgive me, but Paul discusses how the Jerusalems, this Jerusalem is in bondage, and then talks about the new Jerusalem that's coming down from heaven. Yeah. To me, the new Jerusalem is that which gives birth. Okay, it's going to be those who are pursuing Yahweh with a pure heart, following his ways, following his commands. Those are going to be the ones that's going to be given birth to. Thus, then it says how she goes out to a place prepared for her in the desert. Yeah. Just like Yahweh took the people of Israel out of Egypt to where? To Mount Sinai. For what? The marriage covenant on day of Shavuot. It's all pointing to Shavuot just the same.
Steve, the resurrection is not when the kingdom is coming down from heaven. That happens later.
Okay, can you say that one more time?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I said when Yeshua is coming, that's the day of the resurrection, to wake up the dead. Yeah, and so he takes the saints with him somewhere for a few months, and then he comes back for the great battle of Armageddon.
Correct, but he doesn't come back. Here's the thing: he comes down. He's with his bride at Mount Sinai. Okay, and Mount again, Sinai. This is covered in our teaching, Satan's Greatest Masquerade. That when Yeshua, think of it this way: we're always talking about how he comes from the east. He splits Mount of Olives, and he's got blood already on him. Well, why does he have blood already on him? Because he just fought the Battle of Armageddon down at Mount Sinai, and now he's coming up. He's going to take over Jerusalem, and he goes straight up. I show a map of it on the teaching. He goes straight up on the east side of the Dead Sea. When you get to the top of the Dead Sea, you can make a straight line from the very top of the Dead Sea straight into Jerusalem, which makes Yeshua coming from what? Into Jerusalem from the east. And he splits Mount of Olives. Mount of Olives is right there on the east side of Jerusalem. So He's already got blood on. So he fought the Battle of Armageddon back at Mount Sinai, and then he saves Jerusalem from there. In fact, in the scriptures, in the prophets, I discussed it in that teaching, it says he goes and saves the tents of Judah at Moab first before he saves Jerusalem. And it's all prophesied. That's how the order is going to happen.
So the Battle of Armageddon is not in Jerusalem, it's in Mount Sinai, according to you.
Correct. Yeah, in fact, if you look at Armageddon, I discussed this in the teaching, Armageddon and the Parousia. That's the teaching, Armageddon and the Parousia. Armageddon is not a Greek word. And a lot of people like to think of Megiddo. That's what it's talking about. It's not. It's Har Moed, mountain of appointed times. And that's Mount Sinai. I discussed that in that teaching.
What's the title of the teaching? Armageddon?
Armageddon.
Parousia,
Correct.
yeah.
Armageddon and the Parousia. Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'm still confused with the timing. So
yeah, me too.
So in between, during the last reign of the Antichrist, Yeshua is with the resurrected, the dead that's who's been resurrected, plus the believers that were alive, but
we're resurrected. All were resurrected.
Don't say resurrected, but the living, because you're confusing me. So if you're a believer, and if this happens during the day of the resurrection, he will take you. You haven't died yet.
1 Corinthians 15.
Okay.
If you look at 1 Corinthians 15, verse 20, right around from 20 on to 24, Paul gives us the 3 resurrections that are taking place. Yeshua, the first fruits, and then those when Yeshua comes, and then at the end of the millennium.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's only 2 more resurrections we're waiting on, and this is when he returns. And then also later on in 15, it discusses when we're alive, we're instantly changed.
Yes. All right. So you're at the Mount Sinai. See, you're already there. You're at the Mount Sinai for the last weeks, months of the Antichrist reign. And then the Antichrist brings his armies to Mount Sinai for the
battle.
And then you fight that battle, you win, and then you move your way towards Jerusalem.
Correct. To clean house.
To clean house. The Antichrist is in Jerusalem.
I don't know if he's there. I tend to think he is defeated at
Mount Sinai.
Correct. And then maybe the false prophet is in Jerusalem, because I think he's the one who's actually over all of the sacrificial system. Okay. So that could be how it plays out. I don't know. I'm with you on that. I have questions on who's back in,
Okay, we'll leave a question mark on that. Okay, and then you go to Jerusalem, and what happens there?
Yeshua cleans house, and from that point on, that is where you're going to enter into the 70th week, if you will, even. Because if you read Daniel, it says how 70 weeks are established for your people and the holy city, Jerusalem. And then it says and it goes through the whole list, and it says to anoint the most holy. I covered this not too long ago in one of my teachings. I think it's even about the 70 weeks of Daniel. Everyone forgets and completely omits that phrase, to anoint the most holy. I started digging into it. That phrase is only used when talking about anointing the altar in Jerusalem. So anointing the most holy, that's it. And if you go, what was the requirement for anointing the most holy? 7 days. It took 7 days to anoint the altar and prepare the priests at the same time. 7 days. So then, once that's done, the week of Sukkot is that week of anointing the altar and the priesthood. And then on the 8th day, the great 8th day, sacrifices begin in true righteousness as is ordained through Yeshua himself. And that takes place. And then, in fact, if you go to Isaiah 66, you can read the beginning to the end of all the tribulation. Seriously. In fact, verses 1 through, forgive me, I'm going to say 5-ish, something like that. Yeshua is talking about the element of, you're wanting to build me a temple. I don't live there. Okay, so here we have, they're wanting to build a temple. And then sacrifices have started. And he says, one who breaks a dog's neck, one who sacrifices a bull, like one who breaks a dog's neck, and goes through all these things are an abomination. Why? Because it's not the priesthood by Yahweh, but that's what's going to be taking place in the end times. They get it set up. And then Yahweh tears into us like, this is going to be utter devastation taking place. It goes to the whole system taking place there. Go to around verse 19, 20-ish, something like that. Suddenly you see the second Exodus taking place. This is how people from all around the world, he sends out his servants to go gather his people from all over. That's the second Exodus. So Isaiah 66, if you just take it one verse at a time, you can see it's from the beginning of the tribulation to the end. And it's all about Yahweh cleaning house in Israel and bringing his people to the land.
And the earth would have been almost destroyed by then, by that time.
Who will be almost destroyed? Forgive me.
The world, the rest of the world.
Oh, yeah. Well, at that time, everyone who followed the Antichrist system, yes. Those who were neutral, rebelling, your servants of Yahweh, who were enslaved at that time. So that's what's going to happen. In fact, if you read Revelation, especially in 13, it says, to whom will doubt the sword, will doubt the sword. To him who will go into captivity, he'll go in captivity. So his people will be enslaved during that time. Those who are not ready, who did not purify themselves beforehand, this is going to be their time of purification at that time. And that will be those who Yahweh brings back to the land.
The kingdom from the heavens, when does it come down? No,
I'm with you. I just made a teaching on this titled "The Kingdom of Heaven is at Hand." And if you have a moment,
at the end of the millennium reign, I mean.
Okay, let's understand something. I think for my current understanding is that Yeshua said that the kingdom will not be observed, something you see coming. And this is where it goes back into the element of Revelation 11. It says the kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and Savior. This is where it's like it's under new management. He cleans house in Jerusalem and sets up his kingdom there. That's where it's supposed to be. It's in Jerusalem. So it's not something that's coming down from heaven. It's something he will establish with his king as being king. His rules, his Torah would be the law of the land at that time. Thus, the kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and Savior. So it's not something you see. And again, I addressed that completely in the teaching simply titled, The Kingdom of Heaven is at Hand, understanding what Yeshua was talking about with those words.
Why do people understand that in an actual city or buildings will be coming down from heaven?
Great question. No, it's a great question because I believed it for a long time and I started realizing, I'm going, why do I believe this? It doesn't say anything
based
like
on
that.
what? No?
I'm sorry?
It doesn't say it anywhere. I mean, why do people have this understanding?
I don't know. Seriously, I mean, I've been brought up in church all my life, and it's just how it was presented, and I accepted it. But then when I started challenging it, I'm going, I don't see verses to say that's what's going to happen. Now we can look at the element of the New Jerusalem coming down, touching, because I don't think that the New Jerusalem, to my understanding anyway, touches land until after the millennium. Now maybe that's why we think of it. It could be, but we know that Yeshua reigns from Jerusalem with his being king. So his kingdom is going to be in the existing Jerusalem we have right now.
Yes, that's my understanding. But then after the millennium reign, a new Jerusalem is coming down. That's how I...
Yeah. Oh, no, I agree with that. But to me, the kingdom of heaven is going to be ruling on earth under Yeshua before that.
Yes.
So I think our mindset goes into the element of the New Jerusalem has to be the kingdom of heaven. And I get it because that's what we want to think of, but that's going to be in eternity after the millennium. Mm-hmm. Yeshua reigns as king over his kingdom. Thus, the kingdom of heaven will be here on earth. And I addressed that in the teaching simply titled, The Kingdom of Heaven is at Hand. Like I said earlier, we were talking earlier, we had said how I had so many different teachings. And before we started going into this, I get people ask me, what's the order I should watch your teachings? I don't know, because they all cross-reference each other and they all interlink. It's like the prophets. We all get different parts and different things. And I'm sure I got lots wrong. Don't get me wrong, but there's different pieces that are right. And we just got to find those gels for all of us.
Yes. No, there are elements, even if people disagree with, the whole timeline. I think there are elements that each one of you, teachers out there on the internet, you get some things right. And I think we need to have all understandings, all different understandings. And anyway. Yeah. Okay. The last thing that I wanted to ask is about the two witnesses. Who are they? What's the role?
Have you seen my teaching on the two witnesses yet?
No.
Okay, I have one titled Two Witnesses. And my current understanding is that it will be Ezekiel and John the Revelator. And I know that sounds so odd because well, I've never seen anybody say it will be Ezekiel and John the Revelator. I just haven't seen it. It's always going to be either Enoch, Moses, Elijah, one of those mixes or something.
Who have been resurrected with Yeshua.
Right, that's what it would say, correct. Yeah. And, well, all I can say is there are there's far more evidence pointing to Ezekiel and John the Revelator. In fact, I hope to update that teaching in the next month or so if things carry on, because I have far more evidence now that I have in front of me that points even showing how Ezekiel himself will be one of the two witnesses. I mean, it's when I read it, I'm going, oh my goodness, this is like, in fact, Yahweh is saying to Ezekiel, when they come to you, and he's talking about end times, he's talking about taking place in the temple at that time. And Yahweh says, when they come to you, you will say this. Well, he's given them a prophecy of what's coming in the future. And he just said, when they come to you, showing Ezekiel's going to be there. Ezekiel would be one of those prophets prophesying to the people. And, but again, their rule will be taking place almost overlapped verbatim with the Antichrist himself. And so there's all these timelines are overlapping with one another. A lot of times we try to make it's got to be here, it all starts here, it all starts here. It's not necessarily the case. They're all going to overlap in different various ways.
They will appear in Jerusalem or in other places also.
My current understanding is that they will be in Jerusalem, and probably just Jerusalem only, because they're prophesying to the people there. I could be wrong on that.
And they will, according to you, they will look human, or they will look supernatural beings.
I think they'll look just as normal as you and me.
Okay, so people will understand that they are, supernatural, or they will think that they're humans with,
I think they'll think they're just humans. Yeah. That's my current thought. I'm very open to that, but I really think that's why they'll be disrespected. They won't be considered of anything,
Because I've also heard the interpretation that they will look supernatural, and people will believe that they're bad aliens, and they have to nuke them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't see that. I could be wrong, but I really believe that they're going to be seen for who they are, the two individuals that they are. The world may not recognize them as such, but Yahweh's going to use them just the same. I don't think Yahweh's going to make them appear as aliens or supernatural in that kind of sense. I really don't see that. I think just as he used his prophets in the days of old by preaching the Torah, repent, come back, this is the way it's supposed to be, and here's the thing too. They're called the two witnesses. So two witnesses of what though? What are they witnesses? What have they witnessed that declares them a witness? Well, Ezekiel was the one who witnessed the first Babylonian destruction of the temple. John the Revelator witnessed the second. So they both are witnesses of destruction of Jerusalem.
John the Revelator? I haven't heard this title before.
It's John the disciple. He's the one who wrote the book of Revelation.
The Revelation. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay, no, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah.
So those are the two people who have witnessed the destruction of Jerusalem, and they will be declaring it again in the end, because they are declaring, this is what happened. Guys, you're leading on the exact same road. And so I can easily see that that's what we're going to be seeing take place.
But will the rest of the world have the opportunity to see them and listen to their message, or just people in Jerusalem?
Well, it says the whole world sees their dead bodies. So exactly how that's going to apply will be via the news. I don't know. But my current understanding is that their ministry itself is localized only to the city of Jerusalem and Israel about. I don't see them traveling the world. I can be completely wrong on that. I feel as if that's what it's going to be.
And they appear simultaneously with the Antichrist.
I think so. Yes. Somehow, some way it will overlap maybe a little bit here and there, but that will be the bulk of their rule during his days. All
right. Okay. And lastly, after Yahushua cleans house, as you say, and then he sends his people to gather whoever has survived the mayhem.
Correct.
There will be believers and unbelievers, the survivors. They all come to Jerusalem, according to you.
Well, will they live in Jerusalem? I don't know. I know the believers will want to be in Jerusalem. That's why they will be going. We know by way of what was given to us in the scriptures that there's going to be people who live in Egypt. And if they don't come to the feasts, well, then they don't get their rain. So we know the people who are living over there, at least. So there's lots of ways and interpretations. Oh, man, I don't know. That's a good question.
I mean, to be realistic, think about numbers. How many people?
Well, let's think realistically at the same time.
We're talking about the whole area of the Promised Land.
Right.
Not just the city of Jerusalem.
Right. I'm with you. I've never done, I wouldn't know how to fact check this, but I've been told at one time, you can put every single person of the world.
Yeah, in the island of Manhattan.
Well, yeah, something like that, or somewhere in Texas or something like that. So it lets us know that, we do have a lot of land that we can utilize still. How will that play out in the end? I don't know. I do know that when the end is after the tribulation, after Battle of Armageddon, there will not be many people on the earth. There won't be. I can tell you with every.
No, but there will be a lot of resurrected bodies.
Well, the resurrected, okay. I'm talking about those who are entering into the millennium with their existing bodies right now, because you're going to have those, okay?
Yeah.
And those will be the ones who repopulate the earth virtually. And then you got the end of the millennium, where you have a massive amount of people who are deceived by when Satan's loose for a short season. So, and then you got those who are not deceived. That's a whole different ballgame as far as going into that element. But the whole element is there will not be many when I'm starting out. When Yeshua says it's going to be a time of devastation in the whole world, and you look at how a third of the earth is destroyed here, a fourth of the population here is destroyed, and you keep cutting down those thirds and fourths of what's left of what's left. There's not many people going to be left at the very end of it all.
Do you think that's why they have started killing us now?
Could be, yeah. Man, that's a whole different topic in itself too.
Yeah,
because they're doing a good job at it too. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, they've been trying for ages, but
yes,
they're really at it now.
Yeah, good point. Amen to that.
Okay, I think I have it now, sort of.
Well, when you figure it out, let me know, because I'll start asking.
It's more clear. It's clearer. Okay, right. Yeah, and okay, and after the millennium reign, the third resurrection, let's say, okay, yeah, of everybody.
Correct.
What's your understanding there? I mean, for the. Okay, wait, before we go there. In the third resurrection, the people who haven't been resurrected in the second resurrection, that's one part, and then the other part are the people who lived during the millennial reign, died, and they have to wait for the. So then, in the third resurrection, we will still have believers and unbelievers.
Correct.
So there is another judgment there.
Well, this is what we're looking at. When you look at the resurrections, are really paralleled much to what you see with harvests. Okay, Yeshua, the first fruits. And then you have the first resurrection, okay, which would be the first wheat harvest, which takes place early summer, okay? And then that's all only wheat. Then you have the second one, or it should be really the third, which is going to be in the fall. That's going to be your second wheat harvest. And at that time, you have all your fruit harvests coming down. You have the all the things that what we call the forgive me, can't think of the word. But basically, it's going to be like your fruits from off the trees, the grape harvest, if you will, all of that together. This is what's represented with that last and final resurrection. See, in the first resurrection, Yeshua only resurrects who? Those who are faithful, the wheat, okay? Those who purified themselves. Well, then at the end of the millennium, you'll have believers, thus your second wheat harvest. But then you got those who are going to be of the wrath, those of the grape harvest, those who are going to be under the judgment at that time. So that's why the last resurrection is represented at the time, at the very end, the third harvest. Does that make sense? So
that will happen. The third resurrection will happen during the fall feast. You think?
I think I lean that direction. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. You know that you're probably the only one who thinks that the second resurrection will happen during the spring feast. Everybody thinks that Yahushua has already fulfilled the prophetic meaning of the spring feast, and now we have the fall feast, and we're waiting for him during the Feast of the Trumpets, probably.
I think that's where we get something wrong for all of us. To say fulfilled, that means done away with.
No, I'm not talking about the done away.
No, I know.
Understanding. I'm talking about the prophetic.
Same time, correct. But again, remembering that the resurrections are going to be in place, are going to be in line with that of the natural harvest, just the same. Again, you got the first fruits, Yeshua, and then that harvest came right at the time of Shavuot. And then you're going to have the third one in the fall. The first harvest of the wheat, the second harvest of the wheat, and Yeshua being the first fruits.
Second and the third. Yes.
Yeah, everything lines up. It's with what he gives us in the physical to show us in the spiritual.
Okay.
And that's again why I look at. I'm sorry, forgive me.
No, continue. I wanted to ask you if you have more time, because I wanted to ask you also about the 7 horsemen and the 7 seals.
With the 4 horsemen, you mean?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, the 4 horsemen and the 7 seals.
We can go there if you want. That's fine too.
Yeah. But I interrupted you. You were saying something and I interrupted.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is where I understand people point to the Day of Trumpets, especially for the time of the resurrection, because it's the Day of Trumpets. Everyone talks about it.
Yeah.
This is where we have to remember what the Hebrew is given to us. It's Yom Teruah, not Yom Shofar. Yom Teruah means day of shouting, not
Yes.
Day of Trumpets. And so what are we going to hear? We're going to hear what? The trumpet. And so the trumpet is, it's all, we're waiting for the marriage of the bride, okay, the marriage supper of the Lamb. And if you go to Revelation 18, you see it taking place immediately after the resurrection, okay? And so, well, when was the first marriage covenant? Shavuot. And so it all points, if you just read, go to Genesis, Exodus, I think it's 24-ish, 23, 24, actually goes into from 19 to 20 through that. But you see how everything that Paul gives us about the day of the resurrection all happens at the time of Shavuot. The clouds all surrounding the mountain, the fire all around the mountain, hearing the trumpet get louder and louder and stronger. They're supposed to appear right there before him, clean before him. The same principle for all of us, being ready. And so, I don't know, I struggle. I have multiple teachings on the day of Shavuot. If anyone struggles with it, trust me, there's so much that points to Shavuot. It's incredible.
I can see that, what you're saying with Mount Sinai, the connection. But then what's the point of having a day of shouting or trumpets in September?
Well, again, that's going to point us to the end. I think
so if the resurrection happens during Shavuot, then a month, not a month, 2 months, however. When is Shavuot? Shavuot will be 4 months later. Yes. Mm-hmm. What happens for 4 months later?
Well, and again, this is where I'm going to say the fall feasts all point to the very end of the millennium. Okay. The Day of Trumpets could very well be that of the last resurrection. And then when you get the Day of Atonement, Great White Throne Judgment, okay? And then what are you going to have with Sukkot? All been purified and cleaned, and we all Yahweh makes his abode with us. He tabernacles with his people during that time, which was what? The eighth day, eternity. So it's all pointed right there in the fall feasts. And again, I'm going to go back to the element of Shavuot is right at the same time frame of the first wheat harvest.
It makes sense the way you describe it. I understand your logic. I mean, okay, that's new.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, and the 4 horsemen.
Yes.
And the 7 seals and trumpets.
Yeah, I don't know.
You don't know.
I've got my
that
opinions.
Was short.
I have my opinions regarding the white horse. Well, and I cover some of this in the teaching called As in the Days of Noah. And as far as the timing of when it was supposed to happen. And then it shows how it's delayed. And so I go into that. But my current understanding would be this, wrong or right, and I'm open to any suggestions. The white horse, the rider on the white horse, it says he holds a bow. A lot of people look to this and says, oh, this is holding a bow, and they go into all these different theories. However, if you go to the Septuagint, which is the Greek version of the Old Testament, that word for bow that we pull out of Revelation in the Hebrew and the Greek is toxin. Where you take that same word, toxin, from how you would pronounce it, forgive me.
Toxin, yeah.
You go to the Greek Septuagint, that same word is used for the rainbow.
Yes.
Time of the flood. So what does this mean to us? This should let us know that it may not be a bow and arrow, what people think. It's more of a rainbow that this rider is holding, which would imply covenant. Okay, so the white horse could very easily imply Yeshua, the Spirit, going out, declaring the covenant, gathering those for the covenant. I lean to that element. And then you have the second horse, which is the white horse, the red horse, forgive me, war. And if I'm correct, I really believe that's going to be at the end of the 40 days of Jerusalem being surrounded. That's when the war begins. That's the rider on the red horse. And immediately that will affect the black and the green horse thereafter. They almost go coincided side by side at the same time. Because when that war begins, I promise you, it's going to be bad for everybody. And so that's where I'm at right now. And that leads into the 5th seal, which is the martyred remnant, which will take place because the Antichrist at that time, he starts pursuing everyone who holds to the name of Yeshua and the commands of Yahweh. And it all takes place right there in the fall and spring feasts. All that's going to go take place from Purim to first Passover. They'll all be taking place within that time frame.
All the four horsemen, you mean all the 7 seals also?
the four horsemen leading into the fifth seal, okay, which is the martyred remnant. And I covered this in the teaching, The Hour of Trial, because remember, we read in Revelation chapter 6 regarding the sixth seal. We read about this great earthquake, the moon turning to blood, all of this stuff taking place. Okay, and in fact, it even says at that time that all the world leaders, the military guys, all this stuff, they go into these caves to hide. And I've seen so many people try to apply the sixth seal to that of Armageddon. That can't be Armageddon, because these very people, the kings, the generals, the armies, they're the ones who are fighting Yeshua at the Battle of Armageddon. But here at the sixth seal, it says they're all hiding. They're taking refuge and saying, protect us from this time. So this is at the very beginning, the sixth seal. And here's the thing. When we look, we all at different times get stuck into this different chapter, different thought as we're reading, wherever we're at. We really kind of need to pull away from that mentality and just keep flowing. Don't look at numbers. Just read it like it's been written, because numbers and chapters were all added much time later. Okay, I'm not saying they're not important. I'm just saying, and trying to understand context. If you read from the sixth seal in Revelation chapter 6, keep reading. Don't stop at the end of chapter where it stops and goes into chapter 7. Just keep reading. And you'll see where it says that the angels were told not to harm anybody or do anything until when? They put the seal of Yahweh on his servants. So that means the sixth seal cannot happen until the seal of Yahweh is put on all of his people, which again takes me back to the first rider, the covenant with the rainbow. This happens first, and then everything else can take place. So, and I address that in multiple different teachings. And when that happens, that ushers in the way for the martyred remnant. The Antichrist will start pursuing those who didn't make it, those who weren't sealed. And it's, boy, I tell you, that we can go on and on forever with that, because there's so much embedded within this time frame. And we get this mentality of this happens first, this happens second, this happens third. It's not always the case. It's almost going to be happening simultaneously. First, here it comes, and then it's like boom, 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 boom. This is how I really see a lot of things overlaying. It's not going to be the seven seals happen all perfectly, then the seven trumpets all happen.
Yes,
perfectly.
because you have a smaller time frame for Revelation. That's why the rest of the people, they have 3.5 years, so they have time.
Right, there you go. Yep.
Yes. Yep. Okay. Right. I don't remember the seven seals. Can you do you want to remind them, please, to me?
Well, your first seal is going to be the white horse. Second seal is the black horse, the red horse, and then the third seal is the black horse, and then the fourth seal is the green horse, and then the fifth seal is the martyred remnant. The sixth seal is the great earthquake, and then the seventh seal is what opens up for the seven trumpets. And this is all in Revelation. This is in Revelation chapter 6, and it continues on from there.
Okay, and after the seventh seal, I mean, when is the seventh seal happening?
That will be the blowing of the trumpets. Okay, and for me, I sincerely believe the seven trumpets is going to be at the time of the sixth seal, the great earthquake, which is the time of the resurrection. That's when all those seals, the trumpets are blown. That all takes place at the time of the resurrection, the great earthquake.
But so the resurrection is not the white horse, Yeshua coming with covenant.
No, that'll be the time. It's the sealing. That will be the sealing for the covenant. Those who will be sealed for the covenant.
So you think that first the sealing will happen and then the rest will follow?
Yeah. Now exactly how that looks, I'm still open to suggestions. I do believe that it coincides with the 5 wise virgins. It's like they're set apart and they go out to meet him, and then the doors opened. Okay. Now, what does that mean for them to go out and meet him? What does it mean the doors finally open for them? How long do they wait out there until the door is opened? For me, my current understanding is that they go out to meet him when they see Jerusalem being surrounded. That is there, and they got 40 days, to my current understanding regarding Ezekiel anyway, says those 40 days are assigned to the northern kingdom. So they got these 40 days to get out to wherever they're going to go for protection. How long are they there? My current thought is that they're there until the time of the resurrection, the time of Shavuot.
Yeshua hasn't come yet, because Yeshua is coming at the day of the resurrection. So they're just waiting there.
Correct.
For him.
Because they're acting upon what they've been given to the prophets. They saw Jerusalem surrounded. And Yeshua said, when you see Jerusalem being surrounded, flee to the mountains.
Yeah, which mountain? I mean.
Yeah, great question. This is where I would suggest it's going to be in Jordan. In fact, I cover some of this in that teaching, Satan's Greatest Masquerade, because I believe those who are in Jerusalem will flee to what's called Basra. Okay, and the prophets talk about Basra. And the funny thing is, Basra in Hebrew means sheep pen. Okay, and so they will flee to this place of safety. And this is where actually one of the prophets, forgive me, I can't, it's in that teaching. It says he will save the tents of Judah in Basra first before saving Jerusalem. And he gives the order of how it's going to take place.
All right. So the five brides are all in Jerusalem.
No. I believe that you talk to five virgins.
Yes.
I believe they're all over the world. I believe they're everywhere, and they need to escape to wherever they need to escape.
In different places, not in one. They don't gather all in one mountain. From
yeah, only those who are in Jerusalem will flee to that area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
mainly mainly consisting of those of the tribe of Judah.
Okay. All right. I think now it's the right time to ask you, who do you think the lost 10 tribes are?
Where or who?
Who? And if you tell me who, then I will understand the where.
Okay. That is a great question, because I see lots of evidence I could point to who they are. And I've looked at lots of different debates. I go, wow, they bring up some great points. But I'm cautious to say I think this is who they are. This is who they are, because when the prophecy regarding from Jacob himself that they will go out to become the multitude of nations. So it's like, this is just me talking out loud, and I'm very open to learn on this. But when I look at it, I think that the 10 tribes are literally spread all over all of the nations. Yes, there are some nations that I've heard some good debates saying, well, this is definitely this, and this tribe would be that because that's what they did. I'm not debating that. I think it's great. But to say specifically, we know for sure 100% beyond the shadow of a doubt, this is that tribe, this is that tribe, I don't think I can go there. The Father hasn't revealed that to me, and maybe he's revealed it to many others, and I'm very open. But I don't want to speak on something I don't feel I have a handle on. I'm open, but I do believe the United States represents this element. And so
because they have many nations living.
Correct. Yeah. And that's also why, and it's also represented through the United Nations, which is housed in the US. And this is, I guess, why I lean to the element of why I see that being Babylon being destroyed by way of US being burned, especially that of New York, the home of the UN. Again, lots of perspectives, and I'm open.
Oh, wow. Okay. It's 11 o'clock here now for me. Time for bed, supposedly, but no way, this can stop. And I can go to bed.
I know it.
Okay.
Well, I hope and pray I've helped at least a little bit, or I didn't make it any worse.
You did. No, you did. Of course, I want to go back and read and, do my thing. But at least I wanted to understand you. I understand what, what's your understand what's your understanding.
Yeah.
And I think I get it now. Great. Amazing. Okay. Anything
else?
One
thing I can say, if there's one thing I would like to say, is just be watching for the Ark of the Covenant. And all of us, all of our timing, our perspectives can be all 100% wrong. If there's one thing I really think we need to be watching for, it's Jerusalem being surrounded and the Ark of the Covenant coming out. Because I think when the Ark comes out, that's what causes Jerusalem to be surrounded. And at that moment, that's when all of us should be like praying and fasting like never before, because it's about to go down.
Yeah. And one more time, Steve, just to make sure that I get you. It's just the Ark of the Covenant that makes you believe that this is very, very soon. This is happening very, very soon.
Well, besides everything we've been seeing with world events, that in itself should keep us all on our toes.
World events can go on like that, for 10, 15, 20, 30 more years.
Totally agree.
Their plans and machinations.
Yep. We've seen it heat up. We've seen it cool down. We've seen it heat up. But the thing is, with right now, it's not slowing down. It's on a slow progression.
No. They're accelerating.
Yeah. And we've never seen so much regarding the nations coming together, with all these agendas that we were hearing about and stuff.
No,
this
wasn't done. Time.
Yeah, it's just, we're seeing things at a whole new level. And because of what we saw with the medical situation so many years ago, that was the first time ever the whole world was in lockdown.
Yes, correct.
That's never happened before ever in time of history.
No.
So we've entered into a time that is unprecedented, and we need to be mindful of that.
But their plans are for it. They go a bit, further out. They have Agenda 2030, so they do believe that by 2030 they will have they'll still be here, pushing us around. And then they have an Agenda 2050. They have plans. So they know something that we don't.
Well, this is why I made the teaching the prophetic X factor. Everyone has their plans, but Yahweh has his plan, and that's the X factor that no one's planned for.
Right. I'm covered. Anything else that I forgot to ask you, and it's important? about
Not that I
prophecy.
can think of. Hopefully, if people can, if they have more questions, they can visit our teachings at torahfamily.org.
Oh,
And Yah willing, that will help them out.
and be careful not to get lost into
Oh,
the
I
maze.
know.
So
I'm
maybe
sorry.
you can hire someone or a volunteer, someone, a follower can group them, do some grouping and
I
navigate.
know. I've been told a lot of my teachings answer questions, but bring up just as many after it's all said and done, So it's like, I know but that's,
It is a maze because you're following a teaching and then you listen to Steve. And by the way, if you want to understand what I'm telling you now, you should watch this, and this. And then 5 minutes afterwards. And by the way, also you should watch this, and that. It's all connected.
I'm so sorry. I know.
So the rest of your life, you'll be watching Steve.
That's funny. As long as we hear him, that's all that matters.
It's great. You're a great, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say teacher. I want to say you have I like you. I like the way you're presenting. I like it very much. It's very easy. It's very pleasing. It's very clear. You're not shouting like other people, like, you have the absolute truth and now you're going to teach us. You remain open. I love that. I love that in you from the first video that I watched. That's why I continue watching, clearly. Because you're humble. You say, this is my understanding. Maybe I'm wrong, but I have a strong feeling that, this is how it is. I like that. I like that. And you're
Well,
funny,
thank you. I appreciate it.
you have all the great qualities of how am I supposed to be a teacher? And
Well, I'm trying, and the Father is always there to keep me humble because I don't know. I have a lot of I have just as many questions as anybody else, and like I said too, a lot of my perspectives, what I bring in different teachings, they are presenting different perspectives from the
yes,
prophetic book, and I try. I think we need to be open with that. I'm open to a lot of things. Yeah, and I know that can be confusing for some, but I have to do my best. When I feel like the Father's given me something, I feel obligated to at least say, guys, this is what I'm seeing. I'm not saying this is right, but let's put this on the bookshelf for us to consider down the road, something down the
yes,
future,
exactly.
And that's just what I have to do. I feel,
Have you done any debates on prophecy?
I'd be straightforward with you. I don't like debates.
You don't like debates?
I like listening to them sometimes, depending on
Okay.
who's doing it, because I don't want to make it. When someone has a debate, it's like two heads butting each other, and that's not me. I like to discuss. If someone wants to discuss with me, man, let's talk. I'm open.
Has
But I'm not
anybody
gonna hear
discussed with you about prophecy?
I've done several different interviews where we've differed different things like that, and we just, I like this, I like this, I like that view, but I've never done a debate, and I I don't know, I never saw Yeshua do a debate, and I like to
Yeah,
try to follow his
maybe debate
example.
is not the right word or definition.
Mhm.
My point was, has anyone who's really researched in prophecy talked to you to say, hey, Steve, this understanding that you have cannot be right because of that verse here, and you
Mhm.
forgot that. But then that kind of, if someone has oh, it's getting late. I'm losing my words.
Well, I can answer your question. If someone would ever want to, I'd be more than willing
All right.
to discuss. I'm not here to say, I've done, people like to they call round tables, multiple people on it and discuss different views. That sounds fun. As long as they know I'm not here to say I'm right, you're wrong. And I pray they wouldn't have that same attitude, but that we're all here as students together to learn and learn from each other. I'm more than for that. I like
There
that
are
kind of stuff.
few people out there like that. A
Yeah, I
few
know.
people.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, Steve, I'm gonna end this recording because it's getting late for me.
Amen.